gonna tell you it's recording.
Fancy.
And you have to tell it it's okay. All right, welcome to the virtual Bourbon Try It series, everybody. Tonight we have Jason Barrett with us, owner and distiller of Black Button Distilling. Thanks for being with us, Jason.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And I wanted to ask you a couple questions and then we'll jump into the tasting just so we know a little bit about your company and yourself.
Sure.
All right, so your distillery is named Black Button Distillery in tribute to your grandfather's button factory. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so in 1922, my great-grandfather went to work for the Shantz Button Company. By the middle of the Depression, he was actually the shop foreman, and when they couldn't pay him his salary, they would give him shares in the company. Now, getting paid in shares of a company that can't pay you, not exactly the world's best investment. But my grandfather got out of Korea, or came back after Korea, and married my grandmother and needed a summer job. So he went to work for his dad for just one summer. Well, by 1983, he owned the company outright. And in 1996, my mom took over that company. Shantz Associates still exists to this day. 50-50 chance it made the buttons on any high-end suit you have hanging in your closet. We specialize in men's suit buttons. There's one problem, though, with passing it on to the fourth generation. I am completely colorblind. So the joke when I was a kid was if I took over the factory, we'd have to only make black buttons. So I decided I would make some black buttons, but of the liquid variety instead. And at this point, the distillery is about 1,000 feet away from the original button factory that I grew up working in, cleaning the floors, whatever my grandfather could do to keep me out from under his feet.
That's a super cool story. So what got you into distilling?
I had a boss that drove me to drink. I worked for an accounting company and I ended up with a bunch of breweries as customers, and I was a home brewer. And then Catoctin Creek in Percyville, Virginia, they make a great organic rye whiskey. They became a client of mine. I fell in love with what they were doing. I realized that what I loved about making beer could translate into love of making whiskey. And at the end, you had whiskey. So I did the perfectly reasonable thing at 24 years old. I quit my Fortune 500 job. I cashed out my Fortune 500 401k. I sold my house and my car, and I moved in with my parents. They were thrilled. And I bought a still and started distilling. And that was in 2012. So actually, we incorporated the company on June 6th. So we just had our 9th birthday 3 days ago.
Oh, yeah. Happy birthday anniversary.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Absolutely.
Cool. Yeah, it's been quite a wild ride. What started out as a one-man band, we now have 83 employees. We distribute in 14 states. We export to Japan. We make about 1,000 bottles a day. Nothing compared to the big guys in Kentucky, and yet decent size for a craft distillery. And I like the 1,000 bottle batch. It's big enough where we have something at the end of the day, but small enough that the attention to detail and quality, we really are hands-on with the product.
Nice. And you mentioned the guys in Kentucky. You're in Rochester, New York, and your website mentioned a lot about using like local grains from local farms. I personally, I'm in the Midwest. I never think of New York as like a farming state, but apparently it is upstate. So it's important to you to use, local New York agriculture, right?
Yep. So we're in the Finger Lakes region, out in the western portion of the state. We're actually about 7 hours from New York City. I can get to Boston or Washington, D.C. much faster than the city itself. And it's rolling hills and, apple orchards and wheat fields. And we've got really great soil. This is, where the glaciers came through in the last ice age. They just dumped a ton of topsoil. I mean, we've got farms where the topsoil is 400 feet deep here in Western New York. And then you combine that with really great fresh water. We've got a great natural agricultural region. And yeah, nobody outside of New York or even in New York City thinks about that. So that was an important thing to me to show off that great agriculture. And when you start with better ingredients, you get a better product. No different than if you buy a $4 steak or a $40 steak. If you're going home and cooking it, the $40 one's probably going to taste better at the end of the day.
This is true. And you also have Black Button Forestry. You're growing your own oak trees. When
Yes.
do you expect to make a barrel out of one of your oak trees? How many years?
So luckily, the farm that I bought had a stand of standing white oak timber that was ready for harvest. We harvested that 2 years ago, cut them into staves. We should be able to make barrels not this summer, but probably the summer of 2022 after we've air dried the staves long enough. And so we should have whiskey out of them 2027, give or take. So yeah, if I thought making whiskey was a long-term investment, making the trees to make the barrels to make the whiskey is even longer term. But for every tree we harvest, we plant about 100. And so someday there will be trees, but probably not ones that I will harvest. So they don't quite line up that way. Well,
Yeah.
I'm a young man. So maybe in my 70s, I'll be harvesting one of those trees I put down in the spring.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. And so I have a question. Out of your lineup, it's probably like asking people if they have a favorite child. What's your favorite product?
Ooh, so it's definitely the 4-grain bourbon. It then just turns into a question of which variation. I love the double barrel because it's so rich and so refined, but on a hot summer day, that's probably too rich for me. Single barrels are obviously unique. Every one of them's different. And on a cold winter night, it's hard to argue with the rich stone fruit notes of the port finish. So it's definitely the 4-grain whiskey. I guess just the exact iteration changes as we go throughout the year.
Okay, that makes sense.
A jealous.
Perfect. And I think that we should all start drinking and getting through these, but we're going to start with the American straight whiskey.
Yep.
All right.
And it's at a 90 proof.
Yep. Yeah, so the American straight whiskey is interesting. It's 90+% corn, and then it was aged in used cooperage. And it came out mostly, as several of the variations of Black Button have, you'll hear this story again and again as we discuss this, sort of as a happy accident. We were making our 4-grain bourbon. We ended up with an issue with our scale. We ended up making whiskey that was much more corn than we had expected. Because it did not meet our normal spec, I really couldn't afford to put it in new charred American white oak barrels because I just didn't have the money to see if that would go wrong. So as we harvested bourbon barrels, we would refill this. Over time, it came into a nice whiskey in its own right. We ultimately ended up partnering with a couple of farm distilleries in the Iowa area, bringing in some of their stuff and creating the blend you see in front of you. So this is sort of a short run for us. Overall, it made about 15,000 bottles. That'll run out probably tail end of this year, first quarter next year. We've gone through about 11,000 of the 15,000 bottles. So it was a neat, fun collaboration, and certainly a great way to make use of whiskey that wasn't quite what we had intended right off the bat. Very light, very sweet, and really shows the difference between what new oak does with what we taste next, our bourbon, and what used oak, just once used, imparts on that spirit. So just a much lighter sipping whiskey, if you will.
Jason, are we supposed to put this over ice or neat, or what do you recommend?
So I drink almost everything on one small ice cube. I've sort of gone the other direction. I know everybody's getting those big ice
Not my thing of ice, I'm ready.
Yeah, so I usually love to throw one ice cube into whiskey. I just find that the water really helps open things up, and that as you cool it down a little bit, it cuts a little bit of that bite in the back. So I drink most of my whiskey over one small ice cube.
Hey, Jason.
Probably the only exception to that being the one we're going to do last, which will be our port finish. And I do generally just drink that one neat because it's got so much going on, and I wouldn't want to water it down.
All right, I'm gonna get an ice cube then. I didn't want to be the wimp guy and drink my whiskey over everything with ice cubes in it, so.
No, everybody
let's
should
do it.
drink it how they like it.
It's your whiskey. Drink it how you like. Right.
That's
Yeah,
true. Well, I actually love it just the way it is. It's actually perfect. The finish is great. It's light, like you said. I'm enjoying it just the way it is, to tell you the truth. It's really nice.
Yeah,
Thank
I think this is like a great summertime whiskey. Like it's so light and just sit outside and
agree.
drink it.
I agree.
Yes. Yeah, and again, that's the interesting thing. Whiskey can be different things. This one being very light, very summertime. By the time we get to the port finish at the end, we'll be singing a different tune because it's that rich stone fruit that I don't drink a lot of port finish in the summer. I'll be honest, but on a cold winter night, especially cold up here, like we went 22 days in 2018 without getting above 0 degrees Fahrenheit.
Ooh.
Oof.
Oh my
Straight,
God.
22 days straight.
No, thank you.
Rochester, New York.
Yeah, Rochester, New York. We're right at the base of Lake Ontario. We get a ton of snow off of Lake Erie, and sometimes in really fun effects. About 2016, we got what up here is called Snowmageddon, where a band of snow came off the lake. It was about 1 mile wide, and it dumped 7 feet of snow.
Wow.
But it was like it was going through town as a cookie cutter. Because if you were, literally, if you were a quarter mile outside of where this train went through, you didn't have any snow.
Wow.
So, like, I'm getting ready to go to work, and all of a sudden I start getting these emails. I can't make it to work. I can't get there. There's too much snow. I'm looking out my window. I'm like, there's 2 inches. What's wrong with you people? And people start sending me pictures of their cars just gone. And I'm like, oh, yeah, no, you should dig out. Don't try to come to work.
Yeah. Wow.
I also find it funny though, like our sales guys will call off, our accounting people will call off. I'll show up to work. All my distillers are there. They all drive big 4-wheel drive trucks. And they're like, "What do you mean we might not have come into work today? We got shit to do." Oh,
That's the way it is. So I like getting everybody's tasting notes. Steve was in the chat and says orange creamsicle off of this one.
Mhm.
See it?
That's definitely what I got on the nose for sure. Orange creamsicle. Yeah, it is light, easy drinker. It's a little bit different tasting. The nose fools you a little bit. I can't say I'm getting orange creamsicle on the taste, but on the nose, get that a little bit light caramel on the taste for me. Yeah.
Yeah. It makes me think of like just caramel corn that you get at like the fair or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that corn comes through in a big way. Mike, did you have a question earlier?
I was just wondering, when did the last snow melt there for you? When?
It snowed in May,
Wow.
Oh,
which was particularly disappointing because it had been 80 degrees 2 weeks before that. So
Yeah, we had a wild May where it was like real hot at the beginning and then it got cold in the middle and it's just been raining now. So
yeah.
all right, so save a little bit of this. We always come back to them in the end. Just leave them open, see if it opens up a little bit. And we're gonna move on to the bourbon world, the 4-grain straight bourbon.
Yeah, so the 4-grain straight bourbon, which we affectionately call Blue Label, that's definitely our mainstay. It's probably what we make 90% of the time. And it's the base for most of what we're going to be tasting after this, because the port finish and the double barrel both started out their lives as 4-grain. So this is the spirit I founded the company to make. As I mentioned earlier, my grandfather would drink bourbon Manhattans and kind of hold court over family dinner on Sunday nights. And as I started making bourbon Manhattans when I came of age, I found that wheated bourbons were sometimes too soft and rye-based bourbons often a little spicier than I was looking for. So I ended up settling into 2 parts wheated bourbon, half a part of straight rye whiskey, and then 1 part vermouth and a 1/4 part Grand Marnier.
Oh,
Probably
nice.
because I was too lazy to deal with cherries every time. And it got to a point where actually I was making these Manhattans in growlers, and I'd have a half a gallon of Manhattan in my fridge so I could just pour it out each night.
I was just expecting you to walk around with the whole growler.
Yeah. So when it came time to make my own whiskey, I wanted a wheated bourbon with a splash of rye. Just simplify my life. And so that's what we have here: 60 corn, 20 wheat, 9 rye, 11 barley. It's double pot distilled. So it goes through both our straight pot still and then our hybrid pot still. Comes off the still at about 150 proof, a little bit on the higher end for most spirits. And then we go into the barrel at 115 proof, which is a little lower than most spirits, but we feel gives it that added edge. The barrels, which I really do think are just an incredibly important part of making this, they're 50% Adirondack cooperage, which is a custom char made for us, and then 50% barrel mill barrels from Minnesota. So it's interesting. You've got kiln dried, very generic Minnesota white oak, and then you've got super specialized Ozark White Mountain Oak. And the two of those mixing together ends up giving us the flavor profile we're looking for. We've got a lot of fresh wood, but also a lot of caramel and toffee notes. And working that barrel program and having that mix has been real key for delivering the spirit that we're tasting here.
Hey, Jason, Southwest Missouri has several large barrel manufacturers. Do you ever buy from them, Independent Stave or McGinnis Wood?
So we used to buy a lot from McGinnis. When we transitioned to larger sizes, that didn't end up working for them. And we did buy ISCs in the early years. The Adirondack cooperage is getting the wood from that portion of Missouri, but then bringing it up on a flatbed and then erecting the barrels and charring them here in New York. So we've gone a little crazy, and luckily they've indulged us. They actually keep track of where they get the trees that our staves come from. And we have found that trees that grow on the southern facing slopes of the Ozark Mountains have considerably more wood sugar in them. So they always crack up. I'm literally like the only guy that's like, not only do I want it from that region, but I literally want it from the south side of the mountain. And it took them a little while to be able to track all of that, but they do it for us, and it creates a great product.
That's very cool.
It is one of those interesting things. Although I'm all for New York agriculture, and I'm looking forward to the New York white oak barrels that I think will be really unique. I'm not going to lie. It's hard to find American white oak better for making bourbon barrels than in the southern portion of Missouri.
You're right. I mean, those are two huge businesses.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah. ISC makes something like 186,000 barrels a month.
Yeah, I passed McGinnis Wood today.
Yeah.
And you
Likewise.
see the logs in their yard and the staves lined up drying right now. Unbelievable.
Well, and let's see, 3 years ago, there was a barrel shortage where they didn't have enough logs on the landing. And they're actually having a little bit of trouble getting enough wood out of the forests right now, given the issues with the housing market and everything. And so they're projecting that if the bourbon need continues to go like this, there will be another barrel shortage in about 24 months, 22 months, something like that.
Thanks.
So we are big planners. So we're already like committing to our barrels that far out so that even if there's a general shortage, it doesn't impact us.
Yeah, you got to plan ahead. So Mike's in chat and he says this 4 grain's fantastic. It's smoky with a lot of finished flavors, toffee, a little chocolatey. I think this one's great. Like you can tell pick out the different grains in it.
You can.
So here's an interesting question. Without reading the bottle, although I realize now that they got put into smaller bottles for you guys, people want to take a guess as to how old this whiskey is. Just the way it drinks. How old do you think it is?
I would say about 6 years.
We go 10.
Well, since you said it the way you said it, I'm gonna have to kind of let us down a path.
Right?
So we're running right about 3.5.
Oh.
So we're just under the 4-year mark. But what's interesting, so we're using 30-gallon barrels, which go a little faster than the 53s.
Yeah.
And then I remember I was talking about that weird weather we have up here. We get 22% evaporative losses in 3 years, which is about the same that they get in Kentucky in 7 or 8. So in some ways, the whiskey does drink like a 6, 7, or 8 year, partly because it has had that much evaporation. So just sort of an interesting quirk. But it was funny. We got a review back from Whiskey Advocate, 89 points. and the one right below us was like a Blanton's 14 year, and they got 90 points. And one of my staff's like, "Oh, they beat us." I was like, "Dude, 3-year-old whiskey going up against 14-year-old whiskey, and we were within 1 point. I'm over the moon." Like,
Yeah, you didn't lose anything there. That's great.
Yeah. So, and some of it again is just that unique climate and a lot of that attention to detail that we put in up here. So works for us.
Yeah, that's
flavor.
delicious. And Steve mentioned he gets like French toast on the palate, and I get that. Like it's a little syrupy.
Mhm.
It's delicious.
Yeah,
Yeah, so-
I get the toffee that, who said it was toffee?
Mike, yeah.
I get that finished in there too.
Yeah, so all of our spirits seem to have sort of this this weight, this kind of thickness, that kind of syrupy note that you're generating. And it's our vodka, our gins. And I think it's really just an impact of the yeast that we use and the stills that we use, because that's definitely a house style that you'll see across our products.
Mhm. Yeah, that's fantastic.
I do prefer the first one better though. That's just my personal opinion.
That's okay.
Yeah. We all have our favorites though, and it's fun to come back to them. So save a little bit of it. We're going to come back to them, let it sit out, and see if it changes when we get through all of them.
Yeah.
But let's open up this cask strength. It's the 110.2 proof.
So yeah, so the cast strength blend, it's going to be that same 60 corn, 20 wheat, 9 rye, 11 barley mash bill. But then it's going to be just fresh, straight from the barrel. It's always interesting. Some barrels move up in proof, some barrels move down in proof. This is going to be a blend of probably about 4 or 5 barrels, whereas the Blue Label we were just tasting is probably a blend of about 80 to 90 barrels. We just far fewer barrels have all the taste flavors we're looking for at cast strength. And it's just a much smaller run product for us. So whereas we're making Blue Label probably every 4 to 6 weeks, we probably only harvest for the cast strength maybe twice a year. Usually once in the spring, once in the fall.
And is it the same age? Is it just right under 4 years?
So that one's going to be, it's going to be running right. The latest batch, which is what we would have sent you, is going to be running right about 3 years, 9 months. So probably about 6 months older than the Blue Label that we just tasted, but still fairly close. And again, it's interesting from an age perspective. If things go in the spring and they get that extra summer, at 3.5 years, they can be great. They go in November where they don't get a lot of change over the winter. They can take till 4.5 years before we deem them ready. So.
Yeah. So Mandy and Will, they're both loving this one.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I do too. I like it's a little spicier. There's a little heat on it. This one's great.
Yeah, it's really amazing how just changing that proof from 84 to 110 can really change the flavor profile of the same whiskey. So in the chat, we had somebody ask, what are the size of the pots that we use for the pot stills? So we have 2. Our main just simple stripping still is 720 gallons. And then that feeds our 350 gallon hybrid pot still with a 4-plate whiskey column on it. And that 350 gallon still is actually the piece of equipment I started with. So our 1,000 bottle batch system is the only system we've ever used. We've never had to scale it up. But what started as 1 batch per month now is 1 batch per day. So it was easier to just make it so we could do more batches than to change the size of the batch and try to keep the whiskey consistent. So.
Yeah, this is fantastic.
Thank you.
They're putting ice in it, so I don't feel.
Yeah. Well, how do you like it with the ice? How's it with the ice?
No, I was just talking to my daughter.
Oh,
Because I said, I don't know if they're gonna drink it with ice. I don't want to be the going, like I said before, I don't want to be the one guy putting ice in my bourbon.
Ray, you can drink it however you like.
Thank you.
Seriously, and we do this on tours all the time. Lots of people get intimidated when we start trying to get them to describe whiskey. I'm like,
Yeah.
it can be simple, thumbs up, thumbs down.
Right.
Do I get a little more, character than that? That's fine. And it's also fun if you want to be like, oh, I taste apricot and cinnamon and fig. That's
I don't-
okay too.
I still don't understand the big round ball of ice. I know somebody put one in there before, but that's a little bit too much ice, don't you think? A little bit watered down, a little bit too much? Or is it just preference on what you prefer? You said it opens it up a little bit with the ice, but still that big giant ball, it seems like a little much.
I feel like that's just an aesthetic for some people. It just looks good and they like it, and it melts slower apparently.
It melts
Okay.
slower because there's no surface area. That's why they do it in that
Yeah.
shape. With it being round, it's a much slower melt. So while it cools, you actually water down your bourbon less.
Oh, all right.
I also always thought it was interesting in the cocktail places you go, especially like in Boston and New York City. You know, they take this glass, they put a piece of ice that's like 80% of the glass, then they pour you like 2 small shots and boom, $18 cocktail.
Yeah. It's an expensive ice
85%.
cube.
But it does melt slower, and again, it gives you that nice cooling effect. And it looks awesome. So
It does.
Oh.
Yeah, we were getting a lot of cinnamon comments on this one, like a lot of cinnamon tasting notes.
yeah.
I love it.
Hey, Ray, I'm doing ice on everything too. A little bit of ice and a little bit straight. So don't worry
Good.
about it.
Cool, cool.
Let's try. So it's the single barrel
Yes.
straight.
It's the
116.
single barrel, double barrel, or the double barrel, single barrel, depending on how you want to look at it.
Okay. Yeah, and you,
So
and you
this-
told us about this one earlier, but maybe not everybody was on. So talk to
Yeah.
us about that, Jason.
So we can go all the way back to the beginning. It's going back like 5 years, and a cooperage opened up on Long Island, and they were making barrels from New York white oak. And one of the differences of New York white oak is that because the trees grow slower, the fibers are much tighter. So it's not only going to take, there's more wood sugar in them, but it's going to take longer for those wood sugars to come out. And it also means that when you fire bend the barrel at the cooperage, you need to let it set for longer, or the wood has actually got stress in it, and the wood starts to rip itself apart right at the strand level. Well, the cooperage was a little new to this, and we were kind of new to this, and none of us realized that they hadn't set the barrels properly. So after about 6 months of the whiskey in the barrels started to literally rip themselves apart. And you go into the warehouse and it would smell great, too great, because a barrel was emptied, it emptied overnight and was sitting on the floor. So once we realized this was happening, we very quickly harvested these barrels into a tank because we had no other barrels to put them in. And we sent these ones back to the cooperage and worked out a deal with them. But now what do? This whiskey is only 6 months old. So we put it back into new Charred American White Oak barrels that came to us from Barrel Mill. And I figure, hey, I know it was in one barrel for 6 months, but when we get to the other side, I'm sure it'll taste just the same and we'll blend it into the regular whiskey. Well, I could not have been more wrong. It turns out that extra 6 months, it was like using 2 tea bags to make a cup of tea. A lot of wood, lot of oak, lot of sawdust notes. It's just a big oaky, smoky whiskey, as Mandy Kay also said.
Yeah, I think it was Jeff typing, but it's in a Mandy's name.
Well, that's hard to tell in the.
Ah,
I can't tell that in the chat.
right.
I know. I saw Jeff. We know
That's on them. Yeah.
them.
They're thinking about going to the joint Facebook account. Those two.
Or not.
That's running the keyboard tonight. And there's no sense in us buying 2 tickets.
That's true. That's true. But yeah, you guys are right. It's really smoky, oaky. It's great though.
Now, this is the first one I've tasted that the age is a little deceiving to me. This one's a little more complex, and I would not pick it for that 3. I'm assuming they're all that same 3.5 year
So
profile.
actually, this one's going to be closer to 5.
Okay, well, that makes more sense then.
Yeah, and we're certainly looking forward as we grow and have been here longer, having whiskey that's ever older. We've been filling 53s since the beginning. We've not yet pulled any of them. So we've actually got whiskey that is now almost 10 years old. And for next year, for our 10-year anniversary, almost 9 years old, or it will be almost 9. Been a long day, guys. It will be almost 9 years old for our 10-year anniversary, because it did take about 1.5 years to get licensed. But yeah, I mean, we started filling 15s. That was what the whiskey was the first couple of years. Usually aged 18 months. We were making 30s and 53s. The 30s always got up to about 3 years before we found them to be ready. And then I'm looking forward to those 53s mostly being in that 7 to 10 year range for when most of those will come out. And at this point, we exclusively fill 53s, but it just takes that time to climb up that bourbon ladder. So.
Yeah.
What you're doing, yeah.
Mike's saying he's getting like a lot of wood flavors, maple, hickory, and Bob loves the smoky. It's almost like a barbecue taste to me. That one's very good. And it has a fun story.
Yep, only 11 barrels made that way. So we have discussed whether we might do it again on purpose, but the actual accident was only 11 barrels.
Yeah. Can you recreate an accident though? Because it turned out so well.
I was gonna say we will have to see. We had another interesting one. So it was a few summers ago, and again, the weigh scale on our mash tun is really quite problematic. It's kind of the bane of my existence. And one of the younger guys had been running it, and they had left it in the full on position. So it's just pumping corn into the mash tun for like 20 minutes. And he has no idea how much corn has gone in. And there's no good way to measure it after the fact. So we, I mean, it's so thick that it's literally just like oatmeal instead of mash. But we're actually adding water to the mash tun just to make it thin enough to draw it out. And we end up having to fill up like 3 fermenters from this one mash tun, which is very unusual for us. And we put the yeast in, and we let it, do its thing for a week. And the same young man who's no longer with us forgot to turn the cooling on the fermenters. So these things are just bubbling away like crazy.
He's having a bad week. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a bad washing machine, like an I Love Lucy thing, where these things are just going nuts. But after a week, we end up cooking them off through the still, and we usually get about 100 proof gallons per fermenter. That's pretty standard for us. And we get 100, we get to 150, we get to 170. These things are just still cranking at like 8 o'clock at night. Finally, we just went home. We just turned off the stills and went home. So we'd been there all day. And the whiskey that came out of those things, it was right around Halloween, actually. So we call it Frankenbrew. But we've got these barrels of Frankenbrew that have this really neat, like creme brulee, vanilla custard thing going on with them. And someday we're going to have to come out with a Frankenbrew whiskey. Again, not entirely sure how we would ever recreate it, but they've got a really
good luck with that.
They've got a really fun, funky thing going on. So that'll probably be a 2022 or 2023 endeavor.
That sounds fun though. Sounds interesting.
Yeah. Let's get that event booked. Oh.
Yeah, let's do that.
I want to be on that one too.
Right. Right. Let's open up the
I'm
single
all for it.
port barrel. I'm excited for this one because I like port finishes. So let's get this one opened up.
So our port finish is a little different than some of the other port finishes. And I definitely recognize the way other people do it is probably a lot more cost effective. So we get our port barrels from Port of New York. It's the only port focused winery in the Finger Lakes. They empty them at 9:30. We refill them by noon. We have a truck standing there as they empty them. As they roll the barrels onto our truck comes straight back to the warehouse, or we have whiskey standing by ready to fill them. So the whiskey that goes into it is already 2.5 to 3 years old in a regular bourbon barrel. And then it's going to spend another 2 to 4 years in that port barrel before it comes out. And they're French oak barrels that have been used for 5+ years to make port. And we just end up with this incredibly dark, rich, stone fruit, cherry, just some really neat fruit notes. And it's definitely the whiskey I like to sip on a cold winter night. It's big, bold port finish bourbon. So every year we make 2 barrels, we sell one of them. And so that does mean I'm slowly accumulating port barrels, but that's okay.
Yeah. So just to comment on the color of that, Steve's in the chat quoting Anchorman, but it's very mahogany and beautiful, like
Yes.
absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
This is the main reason why I clicked yes when I bought this, because of the port.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
absolutely love it.
It's definitely our Mona Lisa, it's the highest end spirit that we make.
Smooth.
You said 2 to 4 years. Do you start tasting them at 2 until it hits the profile you're looking for?
Yep. Yep. So every year, usually in about October, we taste all 8 barrels, and usually end up with 2 of them that are probably ready. And then it's a great debate as to which one gets harvested and which one goes back in the warehouse. So, and in theory, if none of them met our standard, we would bring none of them out. I'm very fortunate that I own the majority of the company. I don't have to really answer to an investor group. So we get to focus on quality. And if stuff's not ready, it won't come out. We aren't going to rush the whiskey. We could grow faster than we do. But that's not what I'm looking for on the whiskey side of things. Luckily, we have a thriving gin business and a bourbon cream, which is kind of like a Bailey's, but better, both of which are much easier to make in volume without impacting quality. So in some ways, the bourbon's the passion project that sucks up all my money, and the gin and the bourbon cream are how we pay the bills.
Well, nice
Great
job,
to-
man. That's a
Yeah.
nice finish to that series.
Thank you.
Congrats on all your hard work.
Yeah. And I'm glad you're waiting until it's perfect instead of just like slinging it out there, because this is truly perfect. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, I mean, to me, whiskey is almost kind of it's one of those life simple pleasures, but it also has sort of this sacred mystique to it. And just no whiskey before its time. Yeah, I mean, we've had ones where we've pulled 12 barrels, got them into a tank, tasted it again, didn't meet our satisfaction. Whiskey's got to go back into the barrels. Yeah, we've had times we've had it out, and believe me, the sales guys are screaming their heads off. Our number one products is out, and I'm like, guys, don't get me wrong, I'll taste barrels twice a day till we find the ones that are right.
It's a
But if
hard
they're
life.
not there, they're not there. Same issue with single barrels. I'm starting to find a lot of places, if they need more single barrels, they just, okay, well, these 10 barrels will be single barrels. And that just doesn't work for me. If it's going to be a single barrel, it's got to be unique. It's got to have a special taste to it. It's got to be, oaky, but sweet, spicy, but pleasant to drink. It's got to have that finish, that mouthfeel. If those things aren't there, I'm not going to call it a single barrel. And if that means we have no single barrels when the accounts want to buy them, put them on a list. I'm sure more will come up in a month or two. I'm not just going to take
that's
some
great.
random barrel out of the warehouse. It's not me.
You used to work for Buffalo Trace before, or what?
No, I've been around for a while, and I mean, it's tough. I mean, a friend of mine who's a great master distiller, and I'll leave out where they work. They called me up, and their boss told them, we're gonna have 15% of our barrels be single barrels this year, and they're like, it was 2% last year. Yeah, but the sales guys are selling them really well, so just take the best 15%. And we'll just call those single barrels. And they were very upset. I mean, I actually think it caused them to start looking for a new job, because they're like, I can't maintain the quality and answer to that kind of an ownership group if they won't listen, that you just can't decide these things by numbers. So I'm very fortunate where, my business partners are my mother and father. My wife works in payroll. It really is a family affair. And as long as there's enough money to keep the lights on, everybody's happy with just doing our very best.
Yeah, and you're doing well. Jason, hold up that bottle if you still have it so everybody can see it, because it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Look at that bottle. This is the port bottle.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah,
nice.
and I don't know. Here, let me turn off you guys are going to see into my kitchen, so I apologize for
Oh,
that.
you're kind of blending into the
What?
background.
but I don't know if you can see it. There's actual engraving on there of our farm, and then the cityscape over here is actually the factory where we are
Super cool.
building downtown where we make it. So our in-house graphic designer did a great job in the cityscape in the back. So, and then the other fun part, we have a 1947 Ford Dually called Big Red, and so that's her on the back there. Thing won't go more than 38 miles an hour, but it could probably tow your house.
That's amazing. I love that bottle. Are you doing anything like online retail, Jason, where people could order this?
Yep. Yeah. So if you go right to our website, blackbuttondistilling.com, everything that we've got in stock at the moment is up. We ship to 41 states. If you live in Delaware, Nebraska, or South Dakota, or a few others, I'm sorry, you're just out of luck. Or have it shipped to a relative that lives over state lines.
Okay, yeah. Bob was asking prices, but Bob, just jump on the website and you can get things probably shipped to Ohio.
Yep. Yeah, we ship to Ohio. And in fact, Ohio is going to be an interesting one. So liquor below 15% alcohol by volume can be sold in the grocery store, which is a fact I have just learned. Our number one selling product is our bourbon cream, which again is kind of like a Bailey's. Well, Bailey's is 17% and we're 15%, which means they'd be in the Ohio liquor stores and we'd be in the Ohio grocery stores. And that could get very interesting.
Oh, yeah.
That is, yeah, you could get with Kroger, major retailer. I have them in Indiana. Please get with Kroger.
So we're in tests with Kroger right now in Kentucky.
Okay.
22
Okay.
stores. Yep. And we're coming to Indiana. You have Big Red?
But yeah, we do have Big Red. They're huge
So-
in Indianapolis.
September 1st, they're launching all 4 of our top SKUs.
That's exciting. Good.
Yeah. Really nice guys, really quality focused. Probably going to do some single barrels in 2022, but they wanted to start off with just the top normal SKUs September 1st.
No, that's going to be great. I'm going to be there September 1st, just knocking on the Big Red liquor store.
Jason, retail closer to St. Louis.
Unfortunately, it would just have to be online. The main, so we're in the whole Northeast, and then Florida, Texas, Colorado, Nevada, Indiana, Kentucky.
Okay.
Jason, let's talk though. I might be able to help you out on that.
I'm open to anything. If you've
All
got
right, man.
you've
Yeah,
got a good distributor and a couple of retail partners that are willing to work with us, we'll go anywhere.
yes. We'll talk when we turn the camera off tonight.
And we stop recording.
Yes.
Connections. All right, guys, let's jump back. Drink some water, do whatever you need to do to clean off your palate. But let's jump back to this American whiskey. It's been open for
Number
a little
one.
bit. Yep,
You
number
know-
one.
I didn't know we were jumping back.
I finished that one actually.
You know, if you finished it, it's okay.
Yeah, unfortunately.
If you
why
think
you-
you jump back to it.
McNew, while you guys are sampling this, Jason got a question for you.
Shoot.
Any plans on the book? Some of the people might know why I'm asking this question, to branch out past this venture and get into like maybe syrups or barbecue sauces with your actual whiskeys. I mean, that is like the hot thing right now, having an actual bourbon syrup or
Yep.
barbecue sauce syrup. Any plans to do that?
Yep. So in our tasting room, we do have bourbon barrel aged maple syrup. The local maple house takes our barrels, hot fills it. And then we had a number of sauces with a sauce company called Burning Asphalt.
Mhm.
They were doing an apple pie, moonshine barbecue sauce, and a vodka sauce, and we were doing Bloody Mary mix. Unfortunately, the pandemic was really, really tough on them. So at the moment, we're out of stock on all of those. But I was just talking to Jim. He's hoping to get back on his feet this summer, and maybe by the fall we'd have it. But yeah, it's great. It's great stuff bringing whiskey and barbecue together. So
Last question. Is there anything, what do you do with your old barrels, like make it into wood chips? Any thought or process of using those, into selling those third party to actually using those in the barbecue world?
yeah, so
I
we
like this guy.
we sell the barrels to breweries, cideries. We've sent them through wood chippers before, and actually one other kind of fun thing. And again, I apologize. I'm going to apologize that I didn't have this on the actual screen, but hopefully you guys will be able to see it. Turns out if you put a barrel, oh, let me turn off my background again. If you put a barrel in a fire pit, oh,
No,
There
There
you
you
go.
go.
it
Oh,
it
there you
creates quite a chimney effect. We had a really old dried out barrel that was never going to swell again. We busted the heads off of it, and me and a couple of the guys just kind of got a little crazy. So I apologize that the quality on it
That
Oh, that's cool.
not ideal.
looks great though. Wow.
But yeah, it was really interesting. My wife walked over and was like, "If that thing falls over and you light the farm on fire."
Like a number 10 char.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were giving it now a level 10 char.
Yeah.
First of its kind.
But yeah, I mean, if I can help with any of that, Steve and these guys have my email address. We'd be happy to help any way we can.
Well,
Well,
Jason,
yeah,
we
we'll-
can talk offline.
Yeah, Will competes in barbecue challenges and things like that. He was recently at Memphis in May.
Okay.
Kind of one of the huge ones in the barbecue world. So yeah, he's a good guy to talk to and represent your brand on the cooking side. So
one other sort of interesting thing, we actually have our own steak rub, and it's not particularly related to the whiskey side of things. It comes from the fact that I love barbecue, and unfortunately, I have recently been diagnosed with being allergic to onions, and everything has onions in it. And so I took my favorite spice rub to the guy that does all the botanicals for us. And I was like, Tom, I need this, but no onions and as high quality as you're willing to go. I'll pay whatever. So I have to buy it 20 pounds at a time because he only does commercial orders. But I put that stuff on everything. Chicken,
The irony that
asparagus.
you said that, Jason, was the first thing when I tried the American Straight. I'm sitting here thinking of recipes, and the first recipe that came to mind was caramelized onions. I was thinking, man, the burger with the caramelized onions would be a great burger. Here we go. I'm
oh,
really
yeah,
thinking that.
yeah.
And for what it's worth, I would absolutely love it until I fell over and you had to rush me to the hospital.
I would not do that to you.
So you'll have to enjoy it for me because I love onions. Onions just don't love me.
That sounds great to the rest of us.
Yes. Yeah. I'll make
Jason?
the whiskey. You guys eat the caramelized onions.
Jason, if you don't mind, I'll send you a ticket to Will's next event. He works with us about monthly or every 6 weeks sometimes, but he does a barbecue cooking show where he or a cooking show really. Sometimes it's barbecue, sometimes it's not. Where he incorporates bourbon into everything, which is pretty cool. So yeah, we'll send you a ticket, and if you can attend, love to have you on there and see what Will does.
Cool. Look forward to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the neat things about this business is you just get to meet all these other artists, whether it's cider makers, barbecue chefs at, high-end cocktail restaurants, watching the cocktail guys do funky stuff with our gin and our bourbon. I mean, there's just so much creativity across this country, and it's such a fun part of this business.
Mhm.
This is good. This actually holds up. I didn't know what it was going to be like going back to a lower proof whiskey
Yeah.
after drinking something over 115 proof, but this is still good. I like it. So
Yeah, that American whiskey, it still holds up. It's still delicious. Yep. Everybody that saved it, what are you guys thinking?
I mean, it's good. It's good, sweet.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I think this
I
is
like
like
all
a
of
great,
them.
great summertime, like drink it on the deck in the sun. It's fantastic.
And Bill likes all of them, and he hates everything. He's like Mikey from the old TV commercials.
The 90 proof, that's a very good breakfast bourbon.
Yeah, there you go.
Breakfast bourbon. There we go.
Yes,
Breakfast bourbon.
absolutely.
Very good.
All right. Let's try go back to this 4 grain, that 84 proof in the bourbon. Let's try that.
Yeah.
If you saved it, if you didn't, good for you. And this one's still holding up too. Like all of those grain flavors are still there. It's still like
Yep.
toffee and fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that 4 grain.
That's my
I
favorite.
do too. Yeah. It's so good.
Yeah, that's what I started the company to make, and it's still probably the one I drink the most of.
Mhm.
So Jason, the 84 proof and the 110 cask strength, are they both the same mash bill?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, same mash bill, same barrels. The cask strength's running about 6 months older, just the way the barrels worked out. But otherwise, exactly the same. So at this point, it's going to be almost all 30s. Most batches, again, 80 to 100 barrels in a batch. And of those 100, maybe 5 or 6. Because it's interesting, barrels always come due on kind of a bell curve. And so although we haven't made 15s in probably about 4 years, we still have maybe 80, 90 of them kicking around the warehouse. And again, like if they either didn't come due with the rest of their classmates or we're saving them for something special, but it's always finding kind of an interesting puzzle piece to put that blend together. So.
Yeah. I think it's amazing you're doing batches with 80 or 90 barrels in it. Even though they're 30, I get that, but I mean, you were laying down some barrels, man. That's impressive. You were out of the gate. Yeah, you were dedicated to this thing.
Yeah, before the pandemic, we made 800. We were making 800 barrels a year.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, this year we're only making 200. But we really want to. We just need the industry to get back on its feet before we can keep putting money like that into the warehouse.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
unfortunately, in 5-6 years, it's going to be a tight year for Black Button. But we got to make sure we make it through this one. So
It's true. It's true. As is challenges for sure.
yeah, I mean we've been very fortunate. We've done better than most, but the craft part of the industry just got decimated these last 18 months, and until it's back on a more stable footing, it's just, it doesn't do any good if you can't pay the rent with it. So we had to cut way back.
And it's smart to scale back so that like you have longevity, because like we still want you here in 10, 15, 20 years. So
Yep.
smart.
Yep. Yeah. And again, we know that day will come, that we have to pay the piper, but we'll figure that out when we do, and we'll be back stronger than ever. So
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go back to this cask strength. If you guys saved any of that,
Oh, yeah.
I love this cask strength. That was fantastic.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. For 110 proof, it drinks real easy.
Oh yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I got a bottle of Elijah Craig cask strength probably 5 years back. And granted, it had been way up high in the warehouse. So it came out at 162 proof. But it was so hot and I felt bad. I actually had to bring it into work and use our equipment to proof it down to around 100. Because at 162 proof, it like burned your lips. Like if you had like a chapped lip,
enjoyable at that point.
it just it hurt. So I had to turn my 162 proof into 100 proof so I could enjoy it. It was still great whiskey, but
That's insane.
Yeah. Man,
You
if we
guys
all
do
had
like
that
a-
option.
We
Jason,
do like a rating of
the
the
best
5 bourbons that we have by any chance?
Yeah, we usually do. We have everybody pick their favorites. We raise
You
hands.
usually do that, or is that not something that you usually do?
No, we usually do. We just have
Oh,
everybody
okay.
like, I'll start and say like, what was your favorite? Call them off by name. And we'll raise hands and we'll vote. Yeah, we do that.
All right.
Because it's interesting to see, because like I love these big groups because everybody has like different palates and different preferences. And what I liked, like maybe somebody liked the opposite, but they're all great. So
I mean, that's again one of the great things about whiskey and about making a variety of them. You might like this one, Ray might like that one, Mr. Bill might like this other one. So, and there's nothing wrong with any of that.
yeah, absolutely. Yep. All right. So the single double barrel, you guys have that left. Let's recheck it.
Will, did you have a question? Comments here?
No, I'm just trying to figure out if I'm a sadist or a nightcap or not. Like, do I drink it now? Do I hold this off? Like, no.
Do I hang out? Yeah.
Depends. What are you barbecuing tomorrow?
I'm not barbecuing anything tomorrow, but I will be on Friday. So
You might need it.
actually thinking about that.
Yeah.
you've got 3 hours on us too, so.
Yeah, right.
I'm technically still at work, but
Yeah, exactly.
No, really?
oh yeah, I'm
All
still
right.
at work, man. Honestly, computers, everything.
Just having the time of your life, drinking in the office. hanging out.
Hey,
That's what you gotta do sometimes.
They're all
those
like,
are
"Whoa,
blessings in life.
look
Those
at
are
Will. He's
blessings.
got his door closed. What a go-getter. He's working late. He's
Yeah, working late.
got a meeting. It sounds like he's got a meeting going on in there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very important.
Everybody's gone. The boss was the last one to leave. I'm like, hey, I gotta Zoom in a couple minutes. See you later, buddy.
Bye, get out. Let's go.
That's cool.
And let's go ahead and jump back into that port finish too.
Yes.
All right, people are voting via chat. Like, I can't really keep up with these. Okay, but I got 2 opposite ones, so that's fun. Yeah. All right, so let's go ahead and do it. If the American whiskey was your favorite, raise your hand or vote in the chat, whatever you want to do.
Is that number 1?
That was number 1. Yeah, number 1. 1, 2,
I'm there.
Yes,
3.
definitely number 1. That was my favorite.
Okay, yeah, that was fantastic. All right, number 2 was that 4 grain bourbon.
That was my least favorite. Did not like it at all. I'm sorry.
Okay, and
That's
let's
okay.
see.
Different whiskeys
Cat-
for different
it's
folks.
not for everybody. That was Mike's favorite though. Number 2 was Mike's favorite.
Same
That
with-
cast
That's
strength.
good.
Number 3. Raise your hands. Yeah, Will's favorite.
Number 2.
Mr. Barton's favorite.
That was my second favorite. Sorry.
Melanie's favorite. Justine and Carrie's favorite.
It was
5
close.
there.
That was
All right,
good.
the single double barrel. Where are we at with that? Mr. Bill's favorite. Jeff Kaplan's favorite. All right.
Only
and
get
this
one
fourth
vote,
That's
Bill.
my wife's favorite.
Yeah.
Tells me all the time. Whenever it's out of stock, she's on my case. You know.
All right,
Me and
this
Jeff's
port
got
finish.
taste.
Second
That was
favorite
my
for sure.
favorite too.
Second favorite for me.
I like that one.
Second favorite.
I like them
right.
all. They're all good.
They're all.
There's not a bad
fantastic.
one in the bunch,
Mandy
actually.
Right.
Kaplan's favorite.
Yeah.
I think there was like a big tie between 1 and 4. I'm here for all of them. 5 though. Super special. Love that.
The biggest surprise was number 1.
Yeah.
It was
I agree.
it was a whole lot better than I would have anticipated it being.
Yeah.
I
Like
totally,
that was
I
your
totally agree. I totally agree.
Especially from that color, it's so light.
Yeah.
That's delicious.
Yeah, it was a
It really is
simple,
good.
it was a simple drinking bourbon. That's basically what it is. It's just really nice, going down, beautiful finish. It's just easy drinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sipping on a
Absolutely.
light beer.
Yeah.
A life is hard. Drinking shouldn't be.
But
Yeah.
But like
It's a
I
grass
like
cutting
seeing, like,
whiskey.
how everybody's
There you
like
go.
their preferences are so different. Like from 1 to 5, everybody had a different one. So that's super cool to see.
Jason, I think that's a tribute to you, the fact that every single one of these 5 got a hand up. So
Yes,
I
they did.
Really?
think that's
Wow,
pretty
that's pretty
cool.
cool.
I think that's pretty cool. The fact that all 5 had someone, at least one person in this group said that was their favorite. That
Yep.
doesn't happen on these type of events. So that's
No,
pretty
it doesn't. It absolutely never does. So yeah, kudos to you for just taking care of quality and making good products.
I was gonna say that. Yeah, that's their quality commitment. We're never gonna put anything out we're not proud of. You know, every bottle goes out with my name, you know, right there on the bottom. And there's no way I'm putting my name on it if I'm not real proud of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if I'm
Yeah,
not
and
gonna
you-
drink it, you don't have to.
Hey, Jason, if I may intercede here a little bit, if you don't mind. A question, statement, actually. The bourbon cream that you were talking about, do you recommend that straight up or with like a cream soda or something like that? And the statement that I have is, as far as me personally, drinking bourbon for, geez, I don't know, 25, 30 years, who knows? About 4 or 5 years ago, I went to St. Augustine Distillery and got my first port. And they won awards with a 90 proof. And then they kind of not poo-pooed, but they said, oh, we also have this port. And it was a life changer for me. I just totally fell in love with the port. And your port is amazing, by the way. But it totally changed my life as far as bourbon, because I'm just look. Angel Envy. I always have an Angel Envy in my batch, and I will be looking for yours for now on.
Have to do it.
But as far as that bourbon cream, what do you recommend doing with that? If you don't mind me asking you.
So I usually drink that on ice or actually with root beer. So
Root beer, okay.
3 ounces of
Root beer
bourbon
sounds
cream,
good.
2 ounces of bourbon. It drinks like a root beer float. But you always got to put the bourbon cream in the glass first, pour the root beer on top. If you go bourbon cream into root beer, it often curdles.
Okay.
But if you go root beer into bourbon cream, you're always fine. So yeah, it drinks just like an adult root beer float.
Yeah, so I was
Pour
gonna
like
say
a
that
black
sounds
and
like a
tan.
fun root beer float. That sounds
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
So Jason, pour like a black and tan.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, yeah.
And that's on your internet side?
It's on the internet site, and actually, if you order a bottle, it's printed right on the side of the bottle too. So
Might have to reprioritize my weekend.
the bourbon cream, we've got the recipes right down the side of the bottle.
Oh, beautiful.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
and again, it's so this one's actually in custom glass. It has our logo in the bottom.
Wow.
Has a nice, easy way to grip the handle. There's nothing worse than a bottle that's got great whiskey in it, but is hard to hold and hard to pour. So we put a lot of thought into making this easy to
I
grab,
agree.
hold at any place. And then we got this great screen printer in Wisconsin that just prints this lovely black satin finish on it.
Yeah,
So-
that's a beautiful bottle too. Love that.
Yeah. No, that one really knocked it out. And again, all done by our in-house designer, Laura Lee Vegvari. She worked for me for about 7 years. I think we're one of the only distilleries that employs a full-time graphic designer, but she just does a fantastic job. So we love having her.
Yeah. Fantastic. So I'm going to wrap this up. Jason, thank you so much for being
Yeah.
here. I'm going to turn off the recording. Everybody's welcome to stay and chit chat. We hang out for a while, but I will turn off the recording. So
See everybody.
bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you, Jason.